We don't see them very often, but when we do, we love a clever deal. And it looks like Intel has pulled off one here yesterday, last night. They've invested a total of $4.1 billion in Dutch company ASML. Rob, talk us through kind of, there's a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts. What they've basically done is Intel, they want everyone to switch to the newest generation chips. They're smaller, and when you make chips smaller, they're cheaper, they're faster, more powerful, use less power, all these great things. The problem is that the companies that make the tools to make these chips, the last time they made the switch, they didn't do so well. So
and ASML is the biggest maker of these tools, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so what they're saying is, well, we don't want to exactly go to those new generation chips because it costs so many billions of dollars, and
invest in the new equipment and all that.
To all the R&D, basically, you have to invent like new lasers, new ways of printing chips, just these gigantic machines, all these billions of dollars of R&D and investments. And what Intel is doing is they're saying, okay, ASML will give you $4.1 billion in total.
So part of that is buying a stake in ASML.
Yeah, a 15% stake in ASML.
And then 10% and then another 5%. And they're going to kick in another $1 billion to fund the research.
For R&D. And then what ASML gets out of that, of course, is that they know they get some capital to use. They don't have to go to their shareholders and tap them for capital.
Right.
There aren't many companies buying these things. If you think about it, there are only a few gigantic chip makers and a few companies that make these tools.
And they also retain their independence because essentially Intel is just an investing
almost
thing.
like a passive investor, yeah. And some other customers are going to do the same
thing. And Intel is great. They're using offshore cash, which they can't bring home without paying huge taxes. So there's that added element to it. But ultimately, what you're talking about is the bottlenecks.
Yeah, the big thing is that Intel wants everyone to play their game. And what their game is making chips that are cheap and fast. And because they're the best at producing these chips. If they get rid of this bottleneck, what that means is that everyone has to switch up to the next generation chips, and guess who the biggest beneficiary of it? It's Intel. So it's kind of like saying, this is a great game, here's 4.1, let's everyone play our game. And that's what
and it's clever because it avoids the antitrust issues. It avoids because everybody's going to have access to the same equipment, but Intel still has the leg
But Intel has so many. Making chips, I can't emphasize enough how complex and difficult this thing is. It's one of the most complex things on Earth. And this is just, everyone will have access to this one technology, but it's not everything. In other words, it's like a complex recipe. It's one part of the recipe, it's not the entire recipe.
And there's no guarantee the strategy all works, obviously.
No.
Because of all that.
Of course not.
But the way they've structured is
the way they've structured is smart in that it'll speed up the new chips, and then also it avoids antitrust problems.
Okay. We'll leave it there, and we will be back with more Breaking Views tomorrow.